All right, well, happy Friday, Central Georgia. It's Meteorologist Ansley Parker here. I am in for Meteorologist Alex Pry this morning, but we are still going to take a look at the extended forecast with a heavy focus, of course, on what is coming up as we head into the upcoming weekend. Our potential winter weather chances are coming better into focus as we go through the next kind of day or so. So I'm going to kind of give you the latest on where that stands right now, and then we'll talk a little bit about the details, who's impacted, what the potential totals could be like, and just go over everything you need to know for Saturday into Sunday. And now there is another situation as we head into Sunday evening in the form of storms. So we'll talk all about that in detail here in just a moment. This is the current satellite and radar right now. We actually do have a little bit of a rain chance out there today. Overall, it's not a very high-end rain chance by any means, but if you were up early this morning, you may have caught this little shower that was rolling over from the west into the east. This is kind of the rain chance that we have for the rest of the day today. Just really light scattered showers that could pop up from time to time. Anything that you do see, you'll be able to duck and dodge. It really won't be much of a washout this afternoon, but we do have that kind of small rain chance. At the moment, there's a really small shower over there in Wilcox County, and other than that, the satellite and radar is quiet aside from the cloud cover that we have outside at the moment. But big picture. We're taking a look across most of the deep south and then parts of the southeast. You can see there is cloud cover just about everywhere you look. And then way out over in Texas, we've got a couple of scattered showers, and we're starting to see a couple showers turn into a little bit of a wintry mix. So this is not a small scale weather event that we have heading into the weekend. This is a large scale event that impacts many areas, not just us. So it starts way out in the west, and it's going to move into the east, into our area as we go throughout the weekend. So this is just kind of to show you the big picture. This is something that's going to impact a lot of areas. I'm sure you know that by now. It's being talked about a lot in the news, not only here in Georgia, but across many different states. So this is what the future view looks like as we play it forward. I just kind of want to show you how impressive and how large scale this event is. What's happening is there is a Canadian air mass that has come down into the area, and it is interacting with a Gulf low pressure system. So we've got Gulf moisture, and then we have this Canadian air mass. They're interacting here, and that's what's creating this just widespread event of winter weather across the southeast here over the next couple of days. So playing the future view forward, obviously we'll go a little more locally here in just a little bit, but this is just to show you how many states this spans and how many different places this is going to impact. Snowfall further to the north, and this kind of wintry mix the further south you go, especially here in the southeast. So that's what that looks like. And then you may have seen that line of showers and thunderstorms that moves across our area. That's what I was mentioning here in the beginning. That's something that we'll also have to talk about heading into the weekend. So on a local scale, there's going to be one really important feature as we go into the weekend that's going to be impacting this forecast, the severity of this forecast across the state, and then how far south this forecast ends up stretching. So you hear us talk about this feature a lot, the wedge. It's when the area of low pressure and high pressure kind of battle for dominance, and it pushes all this air up against the Appalachians, and it has to move down into our area from the northeast. So what we're going to have is a wedge pattern setting up as we go into Saturday. So as we climb into Saturday morning, start to notice the flows coming in from the northeast. It's starting to kind of build in that wedge pattern. Specifically here, as I play the temperatures out, pay attention to the temperatures in Athens versus the temperatures here in Macon and in Dublin. That's when you'll really start to see the wedge setup starting to take place. So we're at Saturday morning. As we head into Saturday afternoon, notice now we're at a 10-degree temperature spread. As that wedge builds in, it reinforces the cooler air in this area here, and it just kind of redrives all the precip in that area. So it's just cloud cover, cooler temperatures, and precip as that wedge builds in. And then outside of that wedge, it's a little bit warmer, temperatures are a little bit higher, and there's just a little bit more flexibility in terms of the forecast. So underneath the wedge is where the winter weather chances are going to be kind of the most severe in terms of the impacts of icing as we go into the upcoming weekend. Outside of the wedge, we are still going to have some impacts here in our area, but we're going to see here in a minute, we're kind of on the lower end of, in terms of severity, the impact scale. So the wedge is going to be a really important feature as we go into the upcoming weekend. You can see as we go into Sunday night, it kind of builds more into our area, and then we fade it out as we go throughout the rest of the day on Sunday. So this graphic kind of echoes exactly what I just showed you. The wedge pattern as it builds into northeast Georgia, where it sets up the heaviest is the area that's going to see the highest impacts. You're looking at severity of impacts by the National Weather Service. The area in red here is highest impact, area in orange is moderate impacts, and then this kind of light yellow color that stretches into our area is low impacts. So the highest impacts, again, under the wedge pattern, you can see it kind of takes the exact same shape that the wedge does. Moderate impacts for portions of northern Georgia, and then down here in central Georgia, low impacts. But we're still talking about some impacts nonetheless. So we're going to break those down for you here in this stream. Now, we're going to start with the future view. I'm going to show you a lot of different models as we normally do when we kind of have these long-term winter weather events on the way. Starting with the graph model because it is in range. We're at Friday now, so we have some of the higher resolution models. We can get a little bit more detailed information about the forecast as we go into the upcoming weekend. So starting with today, it's really a quiet day today. A couple of scattered showers, some cloud cover, and other than that, that's today. And in fact, that's actually what most of the day on Saturday is shaping up to look like as well. When we kick off the day, we may have one or two scattered light showers through the afternoon. You can see that here on the future view, just one or two of these little blips that try to pop up. But overall, much of the day is going to be quiet. So if you need to get outdoors on Saturday, if you need to do anything last minute, or you're trying to be out and about on the roads, especially for our northern counties, Saturday should actually be an okay day to do that. It's as we transition over into Saturday evening that you need to start paying attention to what the road conditions are going to look like. Saturday evening, once the temperatures start to drop near or below freezing, that's when we'll start talking about potential wintry mix here in our northern counties. Now, I'll kind of say this early on. If you are south of I-16, the potential winter weather is really not going to be much of a thing for you. This is really a forecast for areas that are north of I-16, and I'll show you why here in just a minute. So we'll play this through into the late night hours on Saturday, and as we get closer and closer to late Saturday, early Sunday morning, that's when we start to see this wintry mix become a little bit more widespread across our northern counties. So it's really kind of after midnight on Saturday. Most of Sunday is going to be marked by this freezing rain, wintry mix kind of thing in our area. You can see it's rain that tries to transition, and it does that somewhere across our area. So the question here is really how far does the wedge spread into our area? That will be the dividing line between this kind of mixed precip that we have here and just straight rainfall. That's kind of the thing that we don't really know for certain, but it's becoming more and more clear that our northern counties likely will see some sort of freezing rain, wintry mix. Our southern counties are probably closer to seeing rainfall. Exactly, what exactly is that line going to be down to the mile? I don't know for certain, but it looks like this is kind of a pretty good trend to how things are going to go in our area. Again, we're at the early morning hours on Sunday, and this will just kind of carry us through most of Sunday morning. So of course that includes overnight Sunday, likely when you're sleeping, but also when you start to get up and kick off your day. We'll still be dealing with some of this freezing rain into the early morning hours, then into the mid morning, and even the late morning hours. Most of the freezing rain should be moving out by the time we hit Sunday afternoon. So right now we're at Sunday late morning, and then we head into Sunday afternoon. All that freezing rain is gone, but you probably can notice there's still something else that's trying to creep into our area. By the time we hit Sunday afternoon, our temperatures are going to have the chance to climb up above freezing, and as they do that out towards the west, we have an organized line of showers and thunderstorms that's going to make its way towards us. So we have a two-part event on Sunday, all early morning long when you're sleeping, when you kick off your day until about noon. That's when we'll be watching for the freezing rain potential. Then as we hit the afternoon, the temperatures will climb, and then we will be talking more about the potential for showers and a couple of thunderstorms throughout the day on Sunday. So we'll play the future view forward through the second half of Sunday, and you can see this organized line of showers and probably some thunderstorms on Sunday afternoon, entering our northwestern counties by sometime maybe around 2, and then pushing across the area as we go into late Sunday afternoon, early Sunday evening. Now, I know that this probably looks like it's going to be a pretty strong line of showers and thunderstorms. At the moment, it's definitely organized, but I'll show you here in just a minute. The National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center do not have us in any sort of severe weather outlook at the moment. We'll want to pay attention to this as we go throughout Saturday to see if anything changes, to see if we end up getting a little more fuel in our area. Right now, though, these look like they will potentially be sub-severe storms. So this pushes through the area until, again, Sunday evening. And check this out, on Sunday evening, we are still in widespread rainfall across our area. Now, the reason that I even stopped to point this out is because this will be important as we head into the overnight hours and Monday morning. We're getting this rainfall event kind of late into the evening once the sun is going down, and we don't really have the chance for the sunshine to actually evaporate all of this moisture from just the rainfall alone. So as we head into Monday morning, that's why we still have a little bit of a refreeze potential on the early morning hours of Monday, because temperatures are supposed to be below freezing. Any of this standing water that's left with us on early Monday morning does have the potential to freeze. So we lose this in the late night hours, and then again we climb into the early morning hours Monday with clear skies, and any of that standing water will be a potential refreeze question as we head into early Monday morning. So this is the Storm Prediction Center outlook. Like I was just talking about, we are not included in any sort of a severe weather risk right now. You can see some of our southern counties are just grazed in this. It's really just because there's more of a chance down in South Georgia and southern Alabama. We will watch this and see if they try to change or expand it into any portions of our area. But right now, I just don't think that the fuel in terms of daytime heating is necessarily there for our region. So we'll kind of see how this goes into Saturday. Right now, it's not necessarily a severe weather risk, probably just an organized line of showers and a couple of rumbles of thunder as well. And again, we'll keep our eye on that throughout Saturday. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through a couple of the other models. I just showed you the graph model. I actually think the graph model does a fairly good job. It actually may be even overestimating some of the amounts in a couple of areas, but the models are on a fairly consistent story. That wedge area where the areas are under the most kind of intense portion of the wedge up in northeast Georgia, that's definitely the portion that is expecting to see the most severe impacts. And then all models kind of try to do what the GFS model is doing here, graze our northern counties and include them in some form of freezing rain throughout early Sunday morning. So that's what the GFS does as well. Again, that's what the graph was doing. And then we get this second push of showers and a couple of thunderstorms as we head into Sunday evening. So that's what the GFS model is doing for this upcoming weekend, and the Euro model also does something similar. We'll play this one through as well, and you can see same kind of thing. Obviously more intense impacts up there where the wedge is set up, but it does try to graze our northern counties with a little bit of freezing rain early Sunday morning. That line comes through Sunday evening, and then we are done with this as we head into the overnight hours to kick off Monday morning. We are not totally in range with the HER model yet. Her model really only goes at about 24 hours, so we are, or 48 hours, so we are kind of close to seeing what overnight will look like. And you can see same kind of thing. This just doesn't go all the way out into the day on Sunday, but our northern counties included in some of that freezing rain early Sunday morning. So the time frame, which counties are included, all of that is starting to become a little bit more clear. Obviously, we are still a little bit of a ways out. We'll definitely have more details early tomorrow morning, but kind of a general thinking is coming into the better picture as we got to go throughout the rest of today. The northern counties, and it's really looking like it's going to be a Sunday morning situation. As we get into the late night hours Saturday, a couple of things will be popping up. The bulk of this is that early Sunday morning time frame. So I wanted to show this just quickly before I keep talking about a little more of the information that we have out there, just to show you that pink color on the map. For us, it's really talking about freezing rain. And if you're not familiar with what freezing rain is, different levels of the atmosphere actually can be pretty warm. So the temperatures at the surface are what really matter for freezing rain. It will fall as rainfall, but once it comes into contact with the surface, it freezes on contact. So that's actually why it ends up being such an issue, because it doesn't create a snowfall situation like what we had last weekend where it's just nice fluffy snow. It creates an ice situation because the water is freezing on contact with the surface. That's why this is such a headache, and that's why also this is such an important forecast to pay attention to, because it just creates a little bit of an ice issue. So let's take a look at what the National Weather Service is saying in terms of current alerts, what their thinking is on impacts, expected totals, things like that. We'll start with the current watches and warnings. So right now, what you're looking at is a winter storm watch. So what this is saying is kind of outlining the areas that potentially could have some ice accumulation. You'll notice here in central Georgia, it's really not too many counties. We're including Washington, Hancock, Baldwin, Jones, Jasper, and Putnam. And then other than that, nobody else in central Georgia is included at the moment. We'll keep our eye on this to see if they try to do any sort of expansion to the watch as we go throughout the rest of today and the rest of early tomorrow. Right now, though, these are the only counties that are included. So what we can kind of assume is that these are the counties that we should be watching for potential ice accumulation. Now remember, at the beginning of this, I told you the more severe impacts are going to be up in North Georgia. So even though we're watching for ice accumulation, we're not watching for what they will be watching for up in Northeast Georgia, where you see this ice storm warning. This is new actually. As of this morning, they are talking about ice accumulation that could be up to an inch. Now that might not sound that crazy, but we'll see in a minute here. I'll play a graphic for you to kind of show you ice impacts at different amounts, and an inch is really could cause a lot of issues across the areas that are outlined here in purple. So we are in the blue. We're in the winter storm watch. This means we'll probably be watching for accumulations that could be between 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch. And again, I'll detail what that could really mean if we do end up accumulating that. Now, I mentioned this kind of earlier on the models, but this is kind of my personal take on things outlined in the watch and not. I-16 actually happens to be a really good indicator for us for this specific event. Obviously, we have these areas in the watch. This is where we'll be paying attention for potential ice accumulation, but you saw in the future view, it looks maybe it could be a little bit more widespread than just the areas that are in the watch. It all depends on how far south that wedge ends up stretching. If that boundary is a little further towards the north, maybe these counties that are in the watch won't even see any sort of freezing rain. But if that boundary is a little bit further to the south, a couple more counties could be included in this. So that's the slight uncertainty that still remains with this forecast. That's why, you know, if I was telling my personal family this, or if I had a friend that I was kind of trying to give my personal take on, I would say if you are in a county north of I-16, you should still be prepared for the potential for at least a couple of spots of freezing rain. So maybe some patchy ice out on the roads, certain areas that may deal with a little bit of ice accumulation, but the true accumulation, again, up to 1/10 to maybe 1/4 of an inch, I think is still safe to say it's in that watch area. But again, we'll see how that changes as we go into the morning tomorrow. If you are south of I-16, I still think you are basically good to see almost nothing as we go throughout tomorrow. I think that is more certain that that will just be rainfall throughout the weekend. So this is kind of detailing the same thing. I just made this same graphic using the severity impacts that I showed you just a minute ago to show you the projected ice totals as well. So like I said, that purple area, over 1/2 an inch in ice is forecasted in this area. That is where the National Weather Service, you know, emergency management, the state officials will really be paying attention to the area here in purple. Here in North Georgia, this is still a good impact as well. 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch can still do a lot in terms of power outages, can still make the roads impassable as we go throughout Sunday morning. But we are well south of that. We're sitting somewhere, again, like I said, 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch. That definitely still could have some impacts across our area. It may still make travel difficult, at least on that Sunday morning time frame. There could be a couple of spotty power outages, but overall, you know, our kind of widespread catastrophic damage is not expected here in our area. It's definitely going to be something that we'll have to deal with throughout Saturday night into Sunday morning. But like you saw on the future view a little bit ago, the temperatures will be jumping above freezing as we head into the afternoon. And overall, it should really help melt anything that was with us in the morning. So we're kind of talking more about a Sunday morning headache than a prolonged multi-day event here in central Georgia, which is a good thing. I mean, a couple of days ago, this forecast looked a lot different. That low pressure system that's bringing the moisture to us was tracking a lot further south, and this looked like we could be more in this blue category, and more areas in central Georgia we're going to be dealing with icing. So that's kind of where things stand right now. I'll play these future view ice models out for you just to kind of show you what the projected totals look like on different models. And what they're going to do is show you kind of what I just said. If that wedge stretches down far south enough, we'll end up seeing a couple more of our counties seeing some potential ice accumulation. However, if it tracks a little bit further to the north, it could end up kind of nearly avoiding our area altogether. So the GFS model, I actually like this one personally. I think it kind of does a good job keeping in line with the NWS watch and just kind of projecting what a lot of models have been thinking over the last couple of runs, which is those counties that are included in the watch could see up to 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch. So everything that I just showed you outlined here on the GFS model. Different thinking from the European model, but not in a bad way, actually in a little bit of a better way. Like I said, that wedge maybe not stretching quite far as south, and that excludes our counties from seeing actual ice accumulation. Personally, I still think that we'll likely have a little bit down in these counties that are outlined in the watch, just because of the way that the wedge typically goes in our area. I do feel like our northern counties are often included. So an optimistic thinking from the European model here, but I tend to go with what the GFS is saying as opposed to the Euro. However, though, the NAM does actually agree with the Euro. In fact, tracks it a little bit further to the north, so it is potential that a lot of these areas could actually end up not seeing ice accumulation. We kind of just have to see how things shake out as we go into the early morning. I would say prepare for the possibility, and then if we're surprised by less, that would definitely be a good thing. So here is a look at the graph model. That's the model that I just showed you as we played out the whole scenario. So this is what they think, and you can see this is kind of the only one where they drag that actually a little bit further than the watch area, but still IS-16 still ends up being kind of a good dividing line, even with this dragging it a little bit further to the south. And notice the amounts don't jump up at all. We're still talking about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch. So those are the kind of the guarantees here. I don't think we're talking about much more than that, but you know, how far south does that line actually end up tracking? That's the slight uncertainty that still remains in the forecast. Like I said, my personal take, if I was telling a friend or a family, I would just say if you're north of I-16, my personal plan would be to just be off the roads on Sunday morning. It's a Sunday morning. I know there's church service and things like that. Church officials or folks who are making the call about whether or not to have service, again, if you're north of I-16, I would wait until the last possible second. Sometime on Saturday, we'll have more details about which counties it might be safer to be out on the roads versus which counties not quite so much. But if you are able to just be off the roads, if your church already does virtual church or things like that, that would just be my personal take on Sunday morning. Again, by the afternoon, the sun comes out, the temperatures will be higher, and we'll see that line come through. So it's going to take away any of this remaining ice, but at least for the time being, it will be a slight impact through Sunday morning. So that's what the projected totals look like as of right now. I told you I would kind of tell you what that actually means. Meteorologist David Guerrero did a breakout on this last night and did a great job explaining this. So if you're looking for a little bit more info, you can find that from him. But just to kind of show you the category that we're in, remember we're in the 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch. This would be a light glaze. That means you could kind of see some accumulation out on trees and power lines. Like I mentioned, this is kind of a good pointer for those counties north of I-16 that aren't necessarily included in the watch. Just watching for slick spots in a couple of areas, out on sidewalks, out on roadways. That'll be the kind of thing that we're watching for throughout Sunday morning. You just have to use a little bit more caution than you normally would walking and driving. It doesn't mean that the roads are totally going to be iced out. It just means that there's going to be a couple of problem spots. Now, when we work it up to 1/4 of an inch, which is the high end of ice that we could see here in our area, we're talking about more of an impact out on windshields and cars. Dangerous on bridges. Now remember, bridges and overpasses tend to ice before roadways because they're elevated. So it could be a little bit more difficult to stop on bridges and overpasses. So you definitely want to make sure you're taking it slow there. Then when we get up to 1/4 of an inch, we are talking about a couple of power outages. Now I'll work this graphic up and you'll see we're not talking about widespread power outages like we would be if we had higher ice accumulation, but there likely will still be a couple if we happen to get up to around 1/4 of an inch. Working it up to what areas in north and northeast Georgia are going to see, when we start talking about that 1/2 an inch of ice, that's when the impacts start to become a little bit more crippling. We're talking widespread tree and power line damage. So when the ice is so heavy on trees that it just causes the branches to snap or the trees to fall down altogether, this is the range that we start talking about that. The roads start to become much more of an issue. You may remember Central Georgia roads last year when the roads became impassable. Kind of a similar situation to that, where it would be definitely a shutdown. Travel is not going to happen when you have 1/2 an inch of ice out on the roads. Power outages could be prolonged because it may take crews longer to get power back on. It may take crews longer to get out to the areas that need power restoration. So obviously, when we start talking about this category, that's why, you know, you hear this storm being talked about so much. Ice is actually quite a big deal, especially here in Georgia when we don't see it a lot and we don't quite have the infrastructure for that. That is why it may seem like this forecast is being hyped up a bit up in North Georgia. It just is a little bit of a bigger deal for them than it is for us, and that's why we are not complaining that the forecast has trended a little bit further to the north. So if you have folks, my family is up in Atlanta. I've been giving them a lot of advice about this specifically. If you know folks who are up there, kind of detail the same information to them, because I know a lot of people aren't really sure what to make of this. This is what I would make of this, that those areas are going to see really a lot of power outages and the roads are going to be difficult to be on as we go throughout the weekend. Now, I kind of have a couple of takeaways based on everything that we stand at right now, but I'm blocking the graphics, so I'm going to see if I can, oh, actually, you can kind of see it like that. So the main thing is the potential ice accumulation, which we just went over for a long time, so this should be fresh on your mind. Between a tenth to a quarter of an inch in the winter storm watch. So in those counties, Jasper, Putnam, Hancock, Jones, Baldwin, and Washington. Those are the areas that could potentially see this ice accumulation. Now, like I mentioned, counties that are north of I-16 but not necessarily in the watch should still be paying attention as we go throughout Saturday and Sunday for areas of patchy ice. Problem areas, spots that may have seen a little bit of freezing rain throughout the overnight and the early mornings, but are not necessarily going to accumulate up to these amounts, if that makes sense. And then after Sunday afternoon, we have the potential for refreezing on early Monday morning because of how much rainfall we're going to end up seeing with that line coming through on Sunday afternoon. If I could add a fourth bullet point on here, I would say we'll pay attention to the potential for those storms to try to become strong. Right now, the potential is not necessarily there, but I think it's something that we'll be paying attention to throughout Saturday to see if the guidance changes on that. So these are the big takeaways as things stand on Friday morning heading into the upcoming weekend. Again, it's really that Sunday morning time frame. By Sunday morning, I mean right when Sunday starts at midnight and then all the way until noon. That's kind of the time that things could be a little bit of an issue. And then of course, after noon, we see the sun come out, the temperatures are going to rise, and then that line comes through with showers and thunderstorms. I mean, you could not make this forecast up. It has got so much going on. So I want to quickly show you the models don't quite go out until Monday morning just yet, but there's one final piece to this forecast that I just want to mention as we head into the upcoming work week that may kind of get lost with all the potential winter weather that we have, and that is that the temperatures are going to be frigid as we start the upcoming work week. As we go into the overnight hours to kick off Monday, these are the feels like numbers, but I think they kind of do a little bit of a better job reflecting the actual temperature. Notice up there in Atlanta and North Georgia, they're already in the teens. So here in our area, again, the model doesn't go out quite that far, but we are expecting to be somewhere in the upper 20s as we kick off early Monday morning. That's here on the 7-day forecast. That's why there's the refreeze potential. Remember, any of this rainfall that doesn't have the chance to evaporate Sunday afternoon and evening could potentially refreeze on early Monday morning. Silver lining, check out the high temperature on Monday afternoon, 40 degrees, and there's going to be plenty of sunshine as well. So with some winds, some sunshine, and some warmer numbers, hopefully anything that is left with us on Monday will be able to evaporate heading into the afternoon. But the thing that I really can't point out just yet, because the models don't go out that far, is this low temperature on Tuesday morning. 17 degrees is forecasted at the moment. We'll see how that goes as we go throughout the next couple of days, but there's no other way to shake it. Tuesday morning is going to be frigid. And then as we head into the rest of the week, notice the temperature bars don't jump up very high. The highs are going to stay well below average for this time of year in the 40s, and the overnight lows each night are going to get well below freezing as well. So yes, we will lose the actual winter weather potential as we head into the upcoming work week, but the temperatures themselves are still going to feel nice and winter-like through the next couple of days. So that's something to pay attention to as we get beyond this weather impact alert. Of course, lots of updates come your way through the rest of the day today. Meteorologist David Guerrero will be in at midday and then doing another stream coming up this afternoon as well. Meteorologist Ben Jones will be in this evening with updates and then live streams. There will be so many ways to get information, not only today, but also through Saturday as well. We are fully staffed for the weekend, and we will be providing you updates here on 13 WMAZ Plus, on the air, on social, anywhere that you can find us. We will be providing information all weekend long. So make sure to stay up to date with us for the latest. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we will talk again very soon.